Hello, and welcome to this episode of Songs Nobody Asked Me For. My name's Nigel. I run this podcast, and please do subscribe and like and all those things. I'm trying to get back in the zone. It's been interesting because, me with this journey of this is that, there are times when I power them out and other times when I really can't think of anything to say. And they worry me because they get back into that sort of the psyche of me being slightly songwritery and thinking, oh, I'm never going to write another song again, and it feels a little bit like that with this really. And then the other day I thought, yeah, I'm going to go for it, and so I went for one yesterday. It was actually, and I wasn't sure, but I kind of just babbled on about something or other. And then I'd done it, and it's quite long actually. It was about 26, 27 minutes long, and I thought, well, that's quite a long one. And then went to play it back and had no sound, and for some reason I hadn't fit the sound properly. So I'm going to lean forward for a second, and I just want to check and make sure that my sound is on, and it is on, which is good. So it's got no excuse. It's got no excuse now. Yeah, the space between. I kind of was thinking about this as a process alongside of songwriting. I do this a lot, and you know this probably by now. I'm probably a bit sick of it, but I kind of put these two things together as things that sort of go up and down. And I've compared it to songwriting, but it also compares to something else, which is or sits within another field of this, which is around the space between. And the space between, what I meant by that was, what do you do when you're doing? This is very precise, and then it becomes maybe it becomes bigger. Was around what do you do, and then what do you say between songs when you're playing live, and some of this is what creates the buzz and the vibe of a band. I can think of bands I've seen where the singer on the front person says nothing, almost. Just introduces each song. I vaguely remember going to see REM. Well, I remember seeing REM, but I vaguely remember they were a little bit like that. And then you have other people who tell stories or they get a crowd going and hyping. I always remember going to see a sort of... there was a thing in Plymouth when I was down here in the 90s, and it was a kind of Heineken-sponsored music festival thing. We get these other ones now in Plymouth, and I'm sure other cities do as well. But I remember various people being on this. Chumbawamba were on it, and they were fantastic. I'd never seen them before. It was just before they did their I Get Knocked Down, but that song. I get knocked down, but I get up again. It was before that, and they were amazing, and they were kind of really theatrical. But I remember Toyah Willcox was on there as well, and it wasn't a time when Toyah Willcox was... She'd had all her hits and that, and I think all musicians go through this period of, sort of going around doing the hard work and sort of, but not. And she's found another sort of space online and is around again, really. But I remember her jumping up and down and saying, "Come on, everyone," as if we were at Wembley or something. And for me, little reserved me stood there watching all of these and thinking, "Oh, I'm not sure you're making the right connection with this crowd." But I don't know. Maybe people felt that. But there's those different ways of doing it. And I kind of thought about me. There's two reasons I was thinking about this. One was that somebody was telling me about a gig they'd been to down in Cornwall, and I can't remember the artist they went to, but they were, I'm always sometimes compare this to sort of football leagues, and thinking that probably I'm in the National League probably. For any of you who know the football, that's kind of just below the kind of full professional leagues. And maybe this artist that we're going to see was in League One, which is kind of two leagues up from that. We've got the Championship and the Premiership above that, but so quite big. Doing a national tour, but there were very few people there. And she said, "Oh, it was quite uncomfortable because he was quite sarcastic in the sort of chat between the sets, between the songs." And I was listening to that, and I said to her, "Oh, we did a gig the other day. Well, I was really conscious of this, and it was a difficult gig for us. It was a lovely pub in Cornwall. We've been there a couple of times. They've asked us back. There was literally nobody there. There were a few people in the back bar, but in the main area where we were playing. So we performed to our guitarist's wife. She was the only person there. She takes photos and videos for us. So in a way, it was kind of, you can see what's going to happen as you're setting up. And first gig with our new drummer, We're trying to get this drummer in, and he did amazingly well to play. He probably did an hour and a half set in 2 sets, which he learned in about 4 practices. There were mistakes between us and timing issues and all sorts, but I thought he was amazing. We've got one more gig with him next week, which is just a sort of half hour, 40 minutes, which we're pretty tight with. And then I've taken a couple of months of really not looking for gigs because I want to be able to, get him up to scratch. He's a great drummer. But we just kind of thought, well, it's a photo opportunity for some pictures of the new drummer in the band. So we're a 5-piece now. Maybe some video. It's a free practice. We're getting paid for it. But I get pretty pissed off, really. And I started making these little jokes it's Brad's wife. You've met Brad if you've been following this. Brad's wife, Lynn, and saying, "Okay, so this next song. In fact, Lynn, what would you like us to play next? Seeing as you're our audience this evening," and saying all these things, and then I did it a couple of times, and then I started to be aware of thinking, well, the bar staff are over there. And the woman who's offered us the gig is over there, and there's a few people in the back bar. I don't want to do this too much. But it kind of clammed me up a bit, so I wasn't really sure what to say. So those two events really made me think about that space in between. And if you can work this through, you have to backstep a little bit with me to childhood. And I've talked about my childhood a fair amount, and really, I'm quite introverted. I was kind of a little bit insecure as a child, I think. No, not majorly so, but I'm a middle child. I'm a middle son, one of 3 sons. And any of you that are middle children, I mean, if you're older, younger, middle, they each have a role and each have a hang-up and each have an advantage, I think. I'm not really sure what the advantage of being a middle child is. But I think generally speaking, I would have, from my perspective, I want to say that, my elder brother, he was like, got to do everything first. My parents are very, oldest, middle, younger. They'd always, he would have the one responsibilities. He would have seemed to me, the sort of opportunity to drive a trail through into life, and how he did things affected what we were able to do later, and as following siblings. My younger brother was very small when he was young, very, very cute. I've talked about that a little, I think, and everybody thought, oh, he's so cute. And then there was kind of me, really, middle child syndrome. And so I kind of felt, they do say that middle children either become very quiet or very rebellious, and often quite creative, and it's interesting. I don't think I was that quiet, but I was probably fairly quiet. I was a little rebellious, and certainly I'd like to think creative, really. So it's kind of quite interesting to think, this is all interesting, isn't it? Where this all came from. I'm just going to pause for a second now because my screen says something and I don't really know why it does, and I'm slightly worried. So I'm just going to read what that says. No, that's okay. That's okay. We have sound, This is all I care about, really. Oh, and then I'm kicking this. It's all kicking off, isn't it? It's kind of just it's there. Right, where was I? So, I wasn't a person that was ever comfortable putting myself forward, but also there was a bit of me that quite liked the idea that I could. And I don't think I'm an introvert, but I don't think I'm an extrovert. I'm somewhere in the middle of that, and depends on the context, So I teach a lot through my work, and I'm quite happy to get up and teach. When I'm doing therapy, I'm the centre of attention. I'm the person that's running that. But in a crowd, if I'm social, I don't like to be pointed out or brought into a place of being in the centre of things, especially if I don't ask to be. And I guess being in a band sort of does that for you. And I'm really aware of lots of introverts and people that are quite shy that are in bands, and they don't like a big public persona. And but the bit I find that I've had to really work on is what to do in between songs. And the reason I'm just thinking about this podcast in particular as well is because, in a sense, I've taken the piece in between and I've made it even bigger because I don't have the music here. I just got to sit here and talk. And I think it's been putting me off the last couple of weeks. And it's been useful. Hopefully, sometimes I find these little cathartic moments when I think, maybe that's why I've really been struggling to do this. I did loads and then I stopped and I did some more and I stopped and I've done some interviews. And then I just got into this place of thinking I need to do another one of these. But I couldn't find my mojo, couldn't find a way of relaxing enough. I did a couple, and even the one I did yesterday, I was kind of slightly pleased it didn't work because it was just a fast ramble about nothing. And then I really began to think about, well, I wonder whether that shyness and that sort of sense of not always knowing what to say would come into this process. And for some reason, that seems to have liberated me slightly because I do know what to say. I mean, I'm not so shy as to not be able to ever say anything. I'm really not at all. I'm articulate. I'm able to speak. I'm able to talk. But when we're doing gigs, it's a complex process. And I feel a huge responsibility because I'm at the front of the band. I'm there, and I feel that how I am affects how people perceive us. And because I'm kind of, I say this with no modesty or false modesty, I'm kind of a nice guy. That's what I am. I'm a nice guy. So I probably tend to present as a nice guy. And John says about me, oh, you're very personable, and kind of. Sometimes I'd like to be all cool and scowly, I'd like to sort of just, that's how I'd like to be, but I'm never able to be that. So if I'm going to talk, I'm friendly and chatty. Um, but I think there's something about reading the room when you're doing a gig at our level. You know, I kind of I can't think of many bands I've seen more than once really, but it won't surprise people to know that I've seen Genesis more than once, and I think Phil Collins generally was the same at whatever venue he was at. I've seen them at Wembley Stadium, which is a big venue, and I saw them just before they got really big, which was my favourite gig really. In It's called the Showering Pavilion, and it's near Bath, and that was fantastic. But personable in the same way in both venues, really. I think. Now, if you're in a band and people don't know you, then I don't think you can do that. You know, if I've got two people there, if Lynn is there on her own, or if there's just one guy there and a couple of young people pop in the middle of it, I can't be developing a rapport and chatting, and I lose my confidence as well. I mean, I don't share that with the guys so much, but I kind of think actually, really, I lose confidence. So trying to think of anything to say is difficult. I have engaged in conversation with one or two people that are there, saying, "Oh, how are you finding this? Is this okay?" Just spilled my coffee all over my lap there. We'll ignore that because I'm on a roll. Um, uh, is this going okay? I hope you're enjoying it. And I have a couple of little lines I use. There's a line I use a lot, which I probably I need to stop. And then if people don't know us, they don't know I do it. But when I'm playing a song of ours that's fairly new, I'll often say, "So for those of you that have seen us before, this is a new song. For those of you who haven't seen us before, this is a new song," because it kind of works. I think that's jolly funny myself. I kind of enjoyed coming across that for the first time, laugh at my own joke, but it kind of seems to work. So, in the right vein of a place, we played Plymouth, a place called the Bee Bar, which was really busy. When we played the Apple and Parrot in Torquay, I talked about as rammed. The Exeter Phoenix last time we played, it was really busy. And I am much more confident. I am one of those shy people that I would say, and I've said this before, put me in front of 2,000 people, I'd love that. Put me in front of a big crowd, and I feel much more confident than if you put me in front of one or two people. And I think that's especially true if you're playing a gig and you were hoping for more people, or you had a sort of, maybe a sort of false hope that more people were going to be there. And then I find it easier to be confident if they are there, and if they're not there, then I lose my confidence. One of the things I try to do these days is if there aren't many people there, or if I don't feel it, I just think don't say very much. Just be cool by being slightly aloof. So I can't do the sort of the snarly cool I'd love to do. I couldn't tell everyone, "Oh, you fucking bastards," or anything. I can't do that. Couldn't do that. Um, and so I try to just power through the numbers. I think, do you know what? I'm just going to play the music because the music will speak for itself. And I can do that. I mean, the downside of that is if you're doing an hour and a half or 2 hour set, you incorporate into that the fact that you're probably going to be talking, I don't know, in 2 hours, maybe I'm going to be talking for 10, 15 minutes, in total, I would imagine. Introducing a few songs, chatting to people sometimes, getting them to do a bit of a la la and a why did you song. All of those things, they take up a little bit of time. But if you then decide, well, there's nobody to talk to, I just need to power through this, then of course that you've got to be careful that the set doesn't go too quickly. So it's a complicated thing. And then I think there's, on gigs and venues I've played where there's been more than just me, I find it an interesting experience, and because I can see what other people do, and a lot of people are quite serious. We play at a couple of acoustic cafes very occasionally. Tavistock Acoustic's fantastic. I love the Tavistock Acoustic, and actually I've played there for several decades. Actually, from when I was early days in Plymouth, just on my own, they were a great place to go and play. But a lot of people are quite earnest when they introduce their songs and they tell their stories. I'm thinking back to when I interviewed Craig, and I think Craig's probably a person I could imagine just telling you the story of his song, just being really genuine and real. And I don't tend to do that. There's a couple of songs I introduce. I mean, Why Did You Again? I say, oh, this is an Essex love song. That's about as much as I talk about. And I say, I might. Nothing is impossible. I say, oh, this is a song about getting old, not being old, getting old, or something like that. I'll just very small. And occasionally, when we've done an acoustic cafe, and John finds this funny because John will always get really. Sometimes he goes, well, I don't understand what this song's about. What are you singing about here? I don't get it. And so I'll in acoustic occasionally I say, right, I'm going to tell you what this song is about. I first wrote this song when it was, and I kind of do a little bit of that, but not much. And I think I do remember the hardest one. I don't know how I'm going to tell you about this, but the hardest one I ever remember doing was following somebody that was really, really doing well. You kind of play with other bands and other people, and you kind of want, I don't know really. I always think that it's good if you're playing with really good bands. Sometimes we'll see a couple of great bands on before we play, and John will say to me, oh, blimey, we're going to be in trouble. And I say, no, no, no. It's good because it raises our standard, so I think we play better. It's a little bit like having a lot of people there. It raises your standard. I said, no, it raises our game. And also it means that people have a great evening, so they're seeing all these great bands, and we'll be one of those. And then the opposite of that is you play with some shit bands, some shit acts, really. And then you're thinking, to some extent, this is all right, because actually when we come on, we go down really well. But sometimes people leave because they're not enjoying it, or sometimes people are already not enjoying the evening. So I think it's, swings and roundabouts, really. But I think one of the hardest things to do is to go after, at the acoustic cafes sometimes you get these really weird acts that maybe people think are amazing. So like maybe you get sort of like a 30-piece ukulele band plays, and then you're just coming on with you and your guitar and your bass player, and because sometimes we'll do acoustics like that, and you just think, shit, how am I going to follow that? And but it's okay. People are generally respected. But there used to be an acoustic cafe on Mutley Plain in Plymouth. It's great in the Mutley Plain, isn't it? And the name of the pub's gone out of my head for a minute, but pub on Mutley Plain, down in the basement. Rob C talked about it when I was interviewing him, and the Fortescue. That's it, the Fortescue. Shout out to the Fortescue on Mutley Plain. They ran an acoustic cafe in the basement there for years. I don't think it's still running, but I played there one time, and I played after this young woman, and she was really good. Singer-songwriter with a guitar. And the thing that I struggled with, there were a lot of people there, but she was really funny. And I admire people that are really funny. I'm not really I'm kind of fairly earnest in what I play. I can sometimes be a bit funny between songs, but her songs were funny. And she did her last song, and she sort of told the story of it, and then said, "It's a sing along." She said, "I just want you to sing the chorus with me. I'm going to play the chorus now." Now I don't know how to sing this really, because the word that she used was the C word, so beginning in C and ending in T. So I'm going to put a P at the front. I'm going to call it punt. Okay, so the chorus was, "'Cause he's a punt, he's a punt, he's a punt, 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 he's a fucking punt, punt, punt," and the thing with it was because she was very young and looked very sort of, I don't know, stereotypically sweet, innocent, all of that. When she sung that chorus, people couldn't believe it, and the roar of laughter through the whole place. And then everyone's singing with her at the top of their voice. And it was fantastic. It was a great performance. Well done for her. I'd love to know who she was. I'd love to know if she's still around, and I'd love to interview her if she is still around. If she comes across this and thinks, yeah, that was me, then do get in touch. But it was so funny. But I'm on next. And I'm the last act on, because I wasn't big, but I was kind of, I was fairly established within that little circuit. Um, and I'm thinking, I can't follow this. I don't know how to follow this. And I was so insecure for the whole of that set afterwards, because although people were kind of appreciative, I knew that the person before me had killed the audience by being so good. So there's degrees in that, and I lost a lot of confidence in the space between. So I think there's a last meaning of this space between, and then I'm going to finish this because I don't want to talk for too long today. I'm pleased that I've been able to talk to you again. Really, you won't know that, but I am. Um, and I think it's the space that sits in your head when you're playing, and you're wondering what you're going to do next, or what you are going to say, or whether you want to change the order, or how the next song's going to go down, and that space can be quite deafening sometimes because it can make you very insecure. But hey, it's part and parcel of playing. Okay, there, I managed to get one done. I'm so excited about that. And looking forwards, I've got, people I'm trying to pin down for interviews. Um, I'm trying to think of the order of this, and I'm going to say that I'm going to be, yeah, meeting with a wonderful young singer songwriter called Cat Rose after this one. So the next one. There, I made a decision. I've already spoken to her, met with her, done the interview, but I think I'm going to put this one first, and then I'm gonna speak to her. Really enjoyed that, and I've got a couple of others I'm trying to sort of get together. I have two bands I've talked about them, the Ragdolls and the and Heartwood. But oh man, trying to pin them down and between us, it is really frustrating. But I figure that's probably part of the process of this. It's easier to find some people than others, and vice versa for them to find me. I have to fit these in all the time, which doesn't really help. Thank you for following me and listening. It really does make a difference. And as you've been listening, I get quite insecure about these things. So the more people that are listening, the better. And the more people who follow, subscribe, those things really help me, help anybody running a podcast or doing something like this. So yeah, do, if you don't mind. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Spotify, if you're on Apple Music, just subscribe, like, follow, whatever it might be. And those things really help me. Go check out the band, hashtag Music The Curve. You can find us. You can find The Curve on Spotify. Yeah, as ever, I will.